Welcome to the Alternative Leader podcast. My name is Mary Williams and I'm the Mind Architect. I'm also founder of the Alternative Leader Academy and author of It Begins With You. This podcast is dedicated to inspiring the leaders of today to lead with intention, both in their personal and their professional lives. My guests from across the world share their challenges, their knowledge and their experiences so that we can learn from these powerful insights to help us lead with strength, determination and compassion. Welcome to the Alternative Leader podcast. My name is Mary Williams. Today's guest is Anna McAfee. Anna is a LinkedIn trainer, community strategist, and an author. Anna's work is focused on helping people and businesses to build better and more authentic communications and connections, as well as empowering companies and brands to create and scale their own communities. But the reason that I actually invited Anna on today is that she created the hashtag LinkedIn Local movement. Now, if you don't know LinkedIn Local, you'll find this podcast really fascinating because what started out as a small idea to bring her local community together became a global initiative. It spread to over 1,000 cities in 96 countries. So here Anna talks about the trials and tribulations of setting up that community, how it began, where it went, and how it ended. Thank you, Anna. So Anna, you set up the LinkedIn Local movement. And I remember it was funny because I spoke to you, I think almost the week that you had done it was when we first met. And it made me smile because I had been going to do the same thing in Cambridge. And then I spoke to you and was like, oh, well, Anna's done it. She's got this really nice tag. You know, I'll just do it under this sort of, it was hashtag LinkedIn Local, wasn't it, at the time? Right. And then it just went absolutely crazy. I found it absolutely fascinating and almost kind of relieving that I then hadn't done it. To sit back and just watch this sort of global movement come from this one thing you'd done. So first of all, for those people that don't know LinkedIn Local, if there are any out there, how did it start? Take me kind of back to the beginning.
It started when I was having some conversations with some local connections of mine here in Australia, in Coffs Harbour. We had very low engagement rates on LinkedIn. We were having some, just literally in the news feed within each other's posts. And I'd realised through LinkedIn search there was a lot of interesting people locally and I'd never met them before. And so anyway, it started through actually a connection of mine said, well, if our engagement's so low, why don't we meet up? I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. Maybe we could do that. So 2 weeks later, I put up a post on LinkedIn and said, I'm going to host a LinkedIn Local who wants to come. And I put an afterthought, which was a hashtag at the end of it. And within, I think, 2 hours, we had Alexandra in London and Eric in Brussels. And then a week later, there was Manu in New York. So we had 4 people in 4 countries, 4 co-founders of this movement. And it just exploded from there within the 2 years. So this began in June 2017. And by March 2019, we were in 96 countries in over 650 cities with over 1,000 hosts in our host community.
Amazing.
And what it was ultimately, we were a host community of people creating meetups in local cities around the world. And so the impact, we don't know because it all sold tickets, but based on the number of events, I think during that time up until March 2019, the impact, it probably impacted over 300,000 people had been to events just in those first 2 years. We'd had a lot of conversations with LinkedIn, but it was ultimately not for profit. None of us made any money. None of us charged any money. We did this whole mentoring process. We had this host community that we ran, and this really tight-knit group of hosts, and a lot of discussions with LinkedIn. And so I only know the numbers until March 2019. It did continue to grow after that. We stepped away from managing that community at that time based on LinkedIn's terms that they released. We were kind of no longer needed, essentially, as community managers. And so it continued to grow up until March 2020, and then it's obviously significantly dropped off.
No more meeting locally.
No, but lots of cities are picking back up again, which is nice to see.
I mean, that is just, I like I said, I watched it explode over those 2 years, and became a host myself, in Cambridge, and it was just fascinating. And it was that lovely sense of, almost that people were instant friends if they were part of that community, which, I thought was absolutely wonderful. But I remember sitting back looking at that thinking, wow, to be the person that started that, to be even the four of you that started that has to have an impact. Because I know that when I was interviewing on LinkedIn, and I set up, that challenge that I think we first met through, which was 100 conversations in 100 days. I only got to 56 of that because that was eating my entire working life trying to organize it. I've kind of picked it back up in these podcasts, and I just had to call it quits in the end, because I was like, okay, I'm literally just spending all day doing this thing and not earning any money. So, that impact of 300,000 people, 96 countries, 650 cities. I mean, what was the impact on your life?
Quite profound, in that I think it absolutely drove my deep sense of purpose and why. I just adored it. And to this day, I can honestly say, if I could just be paid to run that community, I would have just done it forever. Unfortunately, that wasn't quite on the cards. But so it really helped me find my purpose. And it was one of the reasons I was just so passionate about continuing to drive it. I was also this, the story behind it was, it's like, well, how far can this go? Literally, what, let's just see how far it can go. And we sort of got the answer in the end. We realized how far it could go. But yeah, I guess there was this sense of wonder as well, even as a founder. It was like, well, wow. And the stories why I was receiving from people all over the world, like, this has completely changed my life. We had some incredible stories. So that, from an impact perspective, was really positive. On the flip side to that, it ate up an enormous amount of time, and it drove me away. And by choice, I was not working. I was not seeking clients so much as I was seeking hosts, if that makes sense. So my income certainly did drop, but I was at the phase of starting my business, so there was some helpful or sort of restarting after maternity leave. But the other, I guess, the impact side of things was, I had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old at the time. No, one and a 2-year-old when I started that, and almost 3-year-old. And I would just like it. And then, of course, the requests that we got and the demands and the people that, there was some really strange requests we used to get, and some disputes we had to get involved with.
Wow.
And that really took its toll on me, because we had to, we had to make some decisions about taking people out of it. That was not why we wanted to do it. And again, none of us were doing it for money. It was all sort of, and so that, in between the caring of young children, I really burnt out. And when LinkedIn released some terms after, 9 months of discussion with us, released some terms which very much validated the idea, but ultimately stripped the community of its values, which meant there was no real need for us to continue running mentoring and things like that, because people could literally just follow some very, very basic terms and do what they wanted with it. And I think when I read those terms, there was this really deep sense of just feeling like, okay, there was this sort of almost grief period of just not like, wow, like it was sort of a hit in the gut, but there was also this very deep sense of relief for me. That it took me quite a few months to actually put my finger on, but there was like, okay, I actually don't have to do this anymore. My services are no longer required. And as heartbreaking as that was, it was also in a way quite relief, because I could just go back to my family and just concentrate on them. And I mean, here was the thing, I was, constantly on my phone. Like, I remember my daughter, when she was about 4, just like shouting at me, like, can you just put your phone down? And it's like, when you hear that from a child, young child, you're like, yeah, wow, that's not good parenting. And so yeah, it had a huge, and after that, I mean, I sort of became very, very aware of the burnout that I was going through. And it took a long time, I think, to kind of come back from that.
How did you experience that burnout?
Look, I think for me, the sign, and I even still recognize it now as you go through phases, but for me, the really big thing was I was lacking emotional feeling for things that I should really have felt emotional about. So something would happen, something that was very sad, and I would just sort of brush it off and just completely. And I would think about it a few days later and go, why aren't I more upset about this? And it was a few of those occasions that I started to realize, yeah, wow, I'm not emotionally connected to other things that are going on. And so, yeah, it, I think for me that was like a real recognition. And just not, I guess, inability to focus as well. And I needed to take some time to kind of process everything that was going on and,
remember who you were.
Remember who I was. Yeah. And
it's interesting that you said also about it drove a deep sense of purpose and why. What did that clarify for you? So what was your purpose and why?
Look, my whole purpose and why is really tied to this whole idea of belonging. It's why I love communities, but it's also why I get very deep into sort of, I guess the whole idea of equity, and I've just spent 9 months participating in a community that was very much focused on earth and equity, and how we kind of gather as community, and that sort of sense of gathering, and what it kind of means from different aspects of Indigenous thinking and different aspects of minority values and things like that. So the whole thing about LinkedIn Local was, it wasn't that we were, creating all these business networks, which of course we were. It was that people were messaging me saying, this has completely changed my life. And I would sit back and I would go, how has this changed your life? And it was because people were exposed to new ideas that were different to what they were used to. And they ultimately felt like they belonged in these groups, or it gave them, I guess, a sense of what LinkedIn Local really did, I think, so well, was elevate people as leaders. It was a vehicle for people to lead who probably hadn't ever had that opportunity before. And I think our mentoring process really helped that, particularly for those that had never done that kind of thing before. And there were many hosts, probably like yourself, that had, there was a lot of, young students or, sort of early stage entrepreneurs who really did thrive in that environment. And I think it's because they were able to elevate as leaders, elevate, and develop those leadership skills in ways that they had never done so before. But ultimately for me, it's still around this whole sense of belonging. And so that's kind of where I always fall down little rabbit holes, but it's where my sense of community comes from, is that whole belonging piece.
Do you not think, as I'm sure you do think, actually, that as human beings, just belonging is an integral part of our sort of need, it's not something that's a nice to have, it's a need.
I think it is, and it extends from family, but it extends to so many. It was interesting. I went to an event last week, and there's a very famous pro-female surfer called Lane Beachley, and she was speaking at this event, and there was something that she said that just really struck me, which was when she was growing up, she said, I realized I belonged in the ocean, and women belong in the ocean. And I was like, and so she has like spent her entire career, she's almost 50 now, so she's retired, but she spent her entire career just fighting for equal pay in that sport. And it was just like, women belong in that ocean, and they belong at these competitions. And it was just that whole piece again. It's like, and he was suddenly gender was about belonging. And it always gets me.
It's beautiful, isn't it? So thinking of the people that message you in the stories, you went on to write a book, didn't you, actually, including some of those stories? So what tell us the name of the book and where can people find it?
It's called How a Hashtag Changed the World. And it's stories, lessons and reflections from the LinkedIn Local movement. And I think it's co-authored by myself and Nicole Johnson. And Nicole was integral to a lot of our communication and, email sequences and all sorts of, very much our communicator for a lot of the host, the social media groups and things like that. She was our comms specialist. And Nicole and I had this conversation. We actually had a conversation a year in that this was like, would make such a good book one day. And then when we did stop running the host community, there was this sense of, I can't let these stories just sit in my inbox. There was some really profound, social impact stories in terms of, the money that was being raised or the sponsorship that was happening through some orphanages in India, and just some really incredible stories. So we decided to publish a book just about literally the movement, what happened, how we set it up, what kind of past reflections were in it. But the middle of the book is all the stories that, a collection of about 50 of the stories.
Do you have a favourite?
Do I have a favourite? Yes, I do. And I think it's my favourite because I didn't actually know the story until after I asked for stories, which was from Brooke in Baltimore, who is transgender. And Brooke was male in all sense of purposes through work, and female on Facebook.
Right.
And LinkedIn Local was the first time that she was able to go to a professional environment as a female.
Oh, that's lovely.
And she really felt like that was a really safe place. And I think that, it was an interesting interview for me to do, because it was like, wow. And so, so that, I guess, I'm not sure that it is the best story in the book, but it's the one that is really special for me, because I just literally, it wasn't until I started posting and I just got this message to say, well, I've got an interesting story for you. And so I didn't know until the end. It was a surprise. So and a really nice surprise. So
that's that's an incredibly strong identity story, isn't it? And actually, one of my questions was, how do you think it has affected your identity long term, even though you're not running it anymore? What have you seen the change in yourself?
Look, I think that's a really good question. I guess for me, I'm trying to think of the answer that's different to, it certainly helped me find my purpose. I think it's given me perhaps a sense of, there is a sense of accomplishment, and there is a sense of, I guess, more belief in myself in some aspects, perhaps not in others. One thing I have noticed since then is the more I read about the whole theory about community building, the less confident I feel about it. Whereas I never read any of that when I built one. So, and I think there is a point you can overthink too much, and you can overexpose yourself to too much information, and not take any action anymore. And so I read some, you know, amazing people I admire in the community space, and I think, yeah, wow, like I could never do that. And I sort of have to stop myself and think, actually, no, I did do that once. I'm just not perhaps as vocal about it as I should be.
But I wonder, actually, I'm just going to interrupt you on that, because I wonder whether, you know, you have a very calm presence. And I wonder whether, because I see a lot of people in the community space who are very kind of out there and very loud and very extroverted. And I wonder if there was something about your presence which allowed other people who maybe wouldn't have stepped up normally, who didn't fit that archetypal kind of, right, you know, let's go be the showman. And I wonder if there was something about that kind of said, you know, actually, if Anna can do it, who's calm and quiet, I can do it. And so maybe there was something actually incredibly powerful in that.
Yeah, I think there potentially is. I mean, my co-founder, Alexandra Galvez, we are both introverts, and funnily enough, we are both INFJs. So the fact that we're both the same personality type, I always made us wonder, you know, if we actually personality profile all our hosts, we would probably have a lot of very, very similar. So maybe there is something in that.
Interesting. Well, look, I'm going to wrap up this. I mean, so much information there, and I would definitely encourage people to go buy the book, because it was a beautiful thing. I actually found it a beautiful thing to watch happen, because I just thought, isn't it wonderful how humans are coming together? And that was the thing I loved about it. I love kind of community as well. And yeah, I just loved watching people come together and be friends and meet. And certainly my experience as a host was this, yeah, sort of instant community, and people that actually are still in my network and still contact me and I still speak to. You know, that it was being part of this exciting movement. And I think because I'd had a similar idea, it was a sort of, wow, yeah, I was right in that idea. I just didn't need to do it because someone else did it. And I remember looking at it growing and growing and growing, and having that kind of, wow, I'm glad I'm not attempting to manage that. And really feeling for you, because I could see that it was huge.
It's interesting because I heard that a lot. I heard so many people said, I had this idea, but I pulled together a group on LinkedIn, but I just hadn't activated it offline yet. And there's a really interesting piece in Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, all about creativity. And she has this idea, and it actually happened to her. She wrote a book, half a manuscript, and abandoned it. Met an author, and then a year later, I can't remember the other author's name, she's a very well-known writer, a year later this other woman actually wrote the book.
I remember that. Yeah.
And her analogy was, there are all these ideas running around, and they just have to find the right person. And I truly think that LinkedIn Local, not just in me, but myself and my other co-founders, and then with Ryan joining us from a technical aspect, it did just find the right people at the right time who were willing to grow that. Because had the four of us at the beginning said, just start one in your area, off you go, would it have happened? No, it was because we said, if you want help, reach out, you know, and people came to us because we want to replicate what you're doing. And so we put those mechanisms in place. And I think it was just the right timing.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, look, Anna, I'm going to ask you the 3 questions I ask every podcast guest. So thinking about that period in your life, do you think there was a book, a film, or a piece of music that sort of helped you through the challenges of that time?
Oh, good question. I think that there's a book by Susan Pinker called The Village Effect, which was about face-to-face connection and why it matters. I think that very profoundly affected me at that time. I'm not sure whether it's kind of got me through, but it very much solidified why I think I realized the whole face-to-face connection, why that was the whole important part of it.
Lovely. And the second thing is, and this doesn't have to be related to the LinkedIn Local movement at all, but if you had a tip for people today, something they could either take away and think or take away and do, what would it be?
Look, I would say just take one day at a time and one small step at a time. They do profoundly add up to little tiny steps do add up. one long journey.
Mm.
And so many people just don't take that next step, or they just stand still for a little while. So I guess what I would say is little small steps lead to somewhere.
That's lovely. I love that. Little small steps lead to one long journey. I think that's lovely. I might write that above my desk for those days when you're thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? Okay. And if you were standing in front of world leaders today, what would your message for them be?
My message would be around values, which, funnily enough, I do a bit of work with World Values Day, the V20, so which is about advising the G20. But yeah, I think values are what we learned with LinkedIn Local was how important values were as a community, and we saw LinkedIn strip them.
Yes.
And then what happened to that community after that? So community, business, purpose without values has no value at all. So what I would say is go back to values, look at them, ruminate on them, and implement them and keep them.
Yes, actually do what you say you're going to do.
Yes.
No, Anna, it's, as always, really lovely to speak to you, and I really appreciate you coming on. I really wanted to capture this for listeners because it was just such a fantastic thing, and yeah, I think it really did change an awful lot of lives. Certainly for me, I certainly have people in my life I wouldn't have had I not followed the LinkedIn Local too. So I think it's fantastic. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing all of that story. And where do people find you now if they would like to get in touch?
LinkedIn is where I'm spending most of my time still, surprisingly. So yeah, I'm Anna McAfee on every social media platform, but the one I check most often is LinkedIn.
Lovely. Anna, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Mary. Great to chat.
Hi, I'm Mary Williams, as you know, and thank you so much for listening to the Alternative Leader podcast. I search for guests to bring you lessons and learnings that can help move you forward in your life, help you achieve the success that you want to, in whatever way that shows up for you, to help you lead powerfully, whether that's in your own life, as your parenting, your personal, or your professional, and make you the best that you can be. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and review it, and please share it with as many people as you think also want to move forward and gain success in their lives. If you want to find out more about me, go over to my website, which is www.mari-williams.com. That's www.mari, which is MARI-williams.com, and you'll find links to all of my social media profiles there. There's also a Facebook community that you can join, and again, all the links will be on the website too. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day, and thank you so much for listening.